Yo, what is going on YouTube? I am Germ here. We are back once again talking about some Valorant roster mania, some VCT offseason again, now that the franchising, partnership, whatever teams are locked in for the 2023 season and beyond. We now need to start moving these players all around from the teams that didn't make it in to the teams that are in, needing to finalize rosters and all that stuff. And this all is going to be happening very, very soon. I think one of the first roster dates that you need to have at least something set in place by is like October 15th. Again, it's September 25th. So that is coming very, very soon. We see this tweet from George Geddes here up on the screen talking about how partner teams can sign players starting tomorrow. He tweeted this on September 25th. Tomorrow would be September 26th. Again, that's a Monday, so just starting off the week with some craziness. I'm sure we are going to start getting some big announcements, I would assume, right off the bat. Now, like I said in my previous video, you guys have to keep in mind that usually the bigger moves are going to come earlier in the offseason, or the smaller moves are going to at least need to wait for some of the bigger moves to happen, because a lot of these teams who are interested in the big players out there, like the Optic roster, like Yay, like maybe if some Sentinels players become available or whatever the heck is going on, or even the players from XSET or the players from the Guard or all these different teams, they are going to be going all out for their plan A, for their first option, and then when those plans don't work out, then they're going to go to plan B, C, D, and E. So we really need those first couple of dominoes to fall first. But George Geddes again says that this all could start happening tomorrow, September 26th. So be looking out for that. And in this video today, we're mostly going to be talking about Yay. We'll get to him and the Optic roster in a second, but there is a couple of other pieces of news I want to talk about first. One, not a shocker here, but we do have Brax popping up once again in all of this. He tweeted out, as I look forward to competing in franchising for Valorant, I wanted to put out the message that I'm open for talks as a free agent. I'm looking for existing tier 1 teams or any on the fringe I may believe in, can play any role, and secondary IGL, specifically mid-game. So obviously Brax is putting his hat in the ring, trying to make it back in. Again, he's looking for a tier 1 team. I'm assuming that would be like a partner team or a fringe team he may believe in. So we might see Brax at like in the Valorant partnership, franchising, whatever. I think that's probably unlikely. I think it's more likely we might see him in Ascension if he can find a roster that he does believe in or thinks is good or whatever. It's going to be interesting to see maybe if he doesn't get a ton of great offers or a ton of teams aren't that interested, if he would take, kind of any offer that comes his way in Ascension. But we'll have to wait and see. Brax, obviously a very, very popular player, one that has a lot of fans, a lot of people rooting for him. We'll have to see what ends up for him, because obviously his Valorant stint hasn't gone all that great so far, so maybe he'll be able to maybe he'll be able to turn things around and bounce back now that we're in this partnership era. We also had this from Rob Moore. Sen CEO Rob Moore claims the Dignitas LCS spot deal rumor is unsubstantiated. He tweeted out this. It's pretty crazy when someone with 3K followers makes up a story with no reality and no sources that people would take it seriously. And this is about the guy in the reply here, LCS EV. He ended up tweeting out yesterday something along the lines of the fact that Sentinels was trying to get into the LCS, but now that they're in Valorant partnership, they don't have enough money for both of them, or something along those lines. The tweet started popping off. It was really getting spread around a lot, but Rob Moore is kind of putting a stop to some of those remarks. We've also heard from Lena in a Reddit comment that she knows, she works for Sentinels now. She knows that Sentinels have not been and are not interested in joining the LCS at this time. So that would mean that they're not trying to join the LCS, and I'm assuming they're kind of putting out the rumors that they are having monetary issues or something like that. They're maybe saying, hey, we got money, we're ready to go, we're about to have a big offseason, we're about to do this whole partnership thing right. So that is pretty exciting. Now, into the main topic of the day. This is what a lot of people are looking for, is news about Yay and this Optic roster. This is from, I think, a recent interview or podcast or something like that, just a really long video between Yay and Richard Lewis, which, think whatever you will about Richard Lewis, totally fine, but they were talking and they did get a lot of good things out. Optic Yay says there's a possibility that the squad stays together. They're currently talking with a few different people. Let's see what Yay has to say in this clip.
It's pretty hard to buy out an entire roster, if I'm being honest with you.
Yeah.
And
if it wants to load,
we have basically
Twitter
4
videos.
or 5 buyouts, and especially for a team, I guess, for us that was succeeding and doing really well, to pay that much money and also pay some of the salaries, it would be very hard, and most likely we would have to split up. But there's still a possibility we stay together. we are talking with like a few different people, but it's just a situation in which like it is really hard, unfortunately.
So he does say, there is a possibility that this Optic roster could be staying together into 2023, which is pretty interesting. But like he says, it is going to be difficult. It is rather unlikely because they were so successful. You're in that kind of suffering from success situation where as you are good, which Optic was one of the best teams in the world, it is going to be very, very difficult to have some org bring all these guys in, because not only do they have to pay buyouts from Optic for all these players. Now, hey, Optic isn't exactly in the situation in the world where they have the most leverage. Obviously, not being one of these partnered teams know that Optic is very, very incentivized to sell off these players, so I would assume that's really, really hurting the buyouts. Maybe somebody's going to overpay. Maybe Optic's going to be able to squeeze somebody, but really teams shouldn't be paying that much in terms of buyouts for these players because like I said, what's Optic going to do? Is Optic really going to keep these guys? No, they're going to sell them. So that should definitely lower the buyout prices, but also all of these players have at least decent salaries, and I'm sure they all wish they could be making a little bit more or want a little bit more and want to use all the teams that are interested in them out there to kind of drive up their salaries a little bit, drive up the prices, drive up the bidding war, especially now that some of these teams know they're in franchising. I'm sure they can start to open up their pockets a little bit because they don't have the speculation of maybe not getting in there or something like that. Again, we talked about yesterday where Ye said, he wants to go EMEA or NA. EMEA seems rather unlikely. He talked to some teams, didn't really get offers that suited him or were satisfactory or whatever. So it seems like he's going to be staying in NA. And if that's the case, he said it's not going to be EG. So, which one of the four teams or which couple of the four teams between NRG, C9, 100 Thieves, and Cloud, NRG, 100 Thieves, C9, and Sentinels are trying to get this Optic roster, I don't know. You start to be able to really, really narrow the pack pretty quickly because, obviously not all of those teams would necessarily be willing to bring in all 5 players. Like, would Sentinels really be looking to bring in the entire Optic lineup? I don't know. That seems pretty unlikely to me. So it is interesting to see. But also some people have said that, hey, Ye saying that the Optic team could still all stay together also kind of implies that none of the Optic members have a for sure home yet. They are still all out there and available, and that is kind of interesting as well. One of the other things, or a couple other things we did get from this whole thing as well, or one of the bigger stories, was in reply to this, the Richard Lewis show, 185 with Ye, Richard Lewis and Ye talking, interview style. We had this top comment that kind of breaks down, or TLDR, TLDW, whatever you want to say. In 9 minutes in, this guy says something we kind of already knew, but he said there is still a possibility we stay together. But again, saying it's unlikely because of buyouts and high salaries. Obviously, we already talked about that. He says the biggest possibility is splitting up and mentioned some orgs would love to have them, but they aren't willing to pay the buyouts for the players. Also, Ye said Envy, now Optic, spent a little less than $500,000 to buy him out of ABX, and he understands Optic would like to get some of that in return, which means likely teams will need to pay the buyout and not just let him go for free to make it easier. On the APAC $1 million deal, we said this yesterday, he got an offer from some APAC team for like $1 million per year. He said he wouldn't feel happy. He wants to win championships and wants to leave something behind so others can look at him and get motivation to fulfill their own passions. Here's the biggest thing, though. He says there is a quite massive offer to stay in the Ascension League. Again, this is not the Valorant VCT partnered franchise league, whatever. This is below that. This is your teams that missed out. Your teams like V1, TSM, G2 that are going to be participating in the Ascension League. Optic, the full roster, has apparently received quite a massive offer to stay in the Ascension League as the same 5, and details are being worked out. We'll have to see the details. And again, people are kind of speculating who that team could be. Some people are saying maybe it's G2. Some people are saying maybe it's XSET. Maybe it's V1. Maybe it's TSM. I don't know. They all could make some sense. But anyone who missed out on a Valorant partnership, franchising, whatever, would have a lot of incentives to potentially try and pick up this Optic roster to, one, be absolutely dominant in Ascension, which they would be. Obviously, they're one of the best teams in the world. They would do very, very good in like a tier 2 league, which is what it's going to be at this point, even though it should probably be a very strong tier 2 league. But, you're going to be competing mostly with teams who aren't putting a ton of funding and a ton of resources into this, and their teams aren't going to be making a ton of money or resource or anything from it. But you would get a ton of fans on your side by keeping this Optic roster together. That's what a lot of people want to see. A lot of people want them to stick together, partly because they want NA to be successful and they want them to go compete for titles and championships and stuff, which obviously would suck in the Ascension League. So in some ways, it would be like good or bad. Yes, we would take one of our best teams in the world and bump them down to Ascension, so we wouldn't be getting like the best players and best teams in the world competing. But also, if you are a G2 who all of a sudden seems like they're on Riot's bad side, you can really show Riot you're all about Valorant by spending a lot of money and resources and getting people excited even when you are in the Ascension League. Also, G2, if they're trying to come over to NA and get a lot of fans, this would be a way for a mostly European brand and team that maybe NA fans aren't as familiar with to really kind of capture the North American audience right away by having this Optic roster and win fans over, because again, a lot of fans are upset with G2 and Carlos and their actions and stuff, and by keeping this team together, maybe being really good right off the bat, it could bring G2 into not only the good graces of Riot, but also some fans at the same time. Now also TSM, they want to shell out some FTX money for this team. That could be the case as well. I think that is rather unlikely because the TSM LCS team has not been really spending as aggressively recently, so I don't know why they would do that for Valorant all of a sudden. Don't really think V1 or XSET or one of these other teams makes all that much sense either. If I had to guess, my hunch would be that G2 would make the most sense, but also I think it is rather unlikely that this ends up happening. This would mean that all 5 players would have to agree to not participate in the partnership franchising program, to not compete for an international title, to not do a lot of these things. Now, hey, if the money's good, the money's good, or if it's an awesome opportunity, it's an awesome opportunity, but I think a lot of things would have to go right. I think it is much more likely that we see the Optic roster splitting up across multiple teams, maybe some players ending up as streamers or moving on to the next stage of their career or life or whatever, but probably with a couple players here and there. But again, it all kind of depends on mostly what Ye wants to do and what kind of offers he gets and where he ends up and where the rest of the players are going to go as well. But that's pretty much it for this video today, guys. Definitely drop a like if you did enjoy it. I would appreciate that so much. Leave a comment down below. Let me know what you guys think about anything we talked about in this video today. Subscribe, stay up to date on all my latest content. Hopefully catch you guys in the next one. But until then, peace.